The passengers boarded the flight, settling into their seats as the cabin crew prepared for takeoff. But something felt off. As the plane taxied down the runway, they heard strange whispers echoing through the cabin, as if someone was speaking directly into their ears. The whispers grew louder and more frantic as the plane gained altitude, and soon the passengers could see shadowy figures moving around the cabin. They were horrified to realize that the figures were the ghosts of people who had died on previous flights, their faces twisted in fear and pain. The cabin crew seemed oblivious to the haunting, going about their duties as if nothing was wrong. As the flight wore on, the passengers became increasingly agitated, their nerves frayed by the constant whispers and ghostly apparitions. They tried to alert the crew, but their cries fell on deaf ears. The plane continued on its path, seemingly endless, until finally, it landed at an airport in the middle of nowhere. The passengers stumbled off the plane, gasping for air and shaking with fear. As they looked back at the aircraft, they saw it disappear into thin air, leaving them stranded and alone. It was then that they realized they had been on a ghost plane, doomed to fly forever in another world between life and death. As the airplane took off, passengers settled in for their long flight. It was a red-eye flight, and many were already dozing off. The cabin was dimly lit, and the only sounds were the hum of the engines and the occasional snore from a sleeping passenger. But one passenger was wide awake, and he was looking around the cabin with a strange expression on his face. He wore a black suit and had a pale complexion. He didn't seem to have any luggage, and nobody had seen him board the plane. As the flight attendants walked down the aisle to check on the passengers, they noticed the man's strange behavior. He seemed to be muttering to himself, and he kept glancing at the other passengers. As the flight wore on, things got even stranger. Passengers reported hearing strange noises coming from the overhead compartments, and some even claimed to see movement in the corners of their eyes. When the flight attendants investigated, they found nothing out of the ordinary, but as the night wore on, the strange occurrences became more frequent. Some passengers reported feeling cold spots or sudden gusts of wind, even though the air conditioning was working perfectly. The man in the black suit seemed to be at the center of it all. He continued to mutter to himself, and his strange expression never changed. When passengers tried to strike up a conversation with him, he simply stared straight ahead, unresponsive. As the flight approached its destination, the strange occurrences reached a fever pitch. Passengers reported seeing ghostly apparitions, hearing disembodied voices, and feeling the sensation of being touched by invisible hands. When the plane finally landed, the man in the black suit was nowhere to be found. Some passengers claimed to have seen him disappear into thin air, while others said that he simply vanished when they looked away for a moment. To this day, nobody knows who the man in the black suit was, or what he was doing on that airplane. But those who were on that flight will never forget the eerie and unsettling experience they had on that fateful night. As the passengers boarded the plane, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The flight attendants seemed distant and aloof, and the air inside the plane was cold and clammy. As the plane took off, the cabin began to fill with a strange fog. Passengers coughed and covered their mouths, trying to avoid breathing it in, but it was no use. They soon found themselves slipping into a strange, dreamlike state. The plane began to shake violently, and the passengers realized with horror that they were no longer flying in the sky, but hurtling through a dark, otherworldly void. They could hear the distant screams of other passengers, and something else, something much darker and more sinister, lurking in the darkness. The cabin lights flickered and went out, leaving the passengers in total darkness. Suddenly, they felt the icy grip of cold, clammy hands on their shoulders, as something unseen began to drag them into the void. They screamed and fought, but it was no use. One by one, the passengers were pulled into the darkness, disappearing into the void with a final, blood-curdling scream. Only a few were left, huddled in the back of the plane, as the darkness closed in around him. As the plane landed back on Earth, the remaining passengers stumbled out, their faces pale and haunted. They had survived, but they knew that they would never be the same again. For they had seen something that no human should ever have to witness, something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.